So everyone wants to know what the next great RPG is going to be. The next Baldur's Gate 3, the next Skyrim. We all want to know. Well, I think I've found it and it's coming out in a few months. That RPG is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So this is a wild game. Basically what you're doing is you're part of Expedition 33. You're tracking down a paintress and what she paints dies. So people die around you. It's just something that's known. It seems like it has sort of a Hunger Games style cycle to it. And what you're doing is going after this paintress to try to take her down, to stop the killing. What an epic start. So yeah, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is the next great RPG. I'm calling it right here. We'll check back in a few months and see if that was right. But yeah, this game is developed by Sandfall Interactive, so it's going to be their debut game. They're a French-based studio. They have shown nothing but confidence, which encourages me. We also shouldn't be worried that it's a debut game, because guess what? We've seen a lot of great debut games. When you think about Minecraft, or you think about Undertale, or Stardew Valley, there are some really great ones that have been debut games, and I could keep going and going and going, but think about Dredge, which I just put in my video. There's some awesome debut games. The Witcher and Disco Elysium. It just keeps going, but I want to start most of this by just looking at the game, taking a look at some screenshots, just to get a sense of what we're working with here. And as you can see, the game is beautiful. It has multiple different styles to it. It has a very Elden Ring-like style to the actual boss, enemy creatures, and sort of the glow and aura of the world. But there's also something sort of Final Fantasy 16 about it. Realistic and gritty. I really am interested in a high fidelity JRPG, and that's something they said they specifically wanted to do because there just hasn't been that. So I'm excited for this game. It looks beautiful and they're showing off some good stuff. Now when it comes to inspiration, what can we expect from Clair Obscur Expedition 33? Well, the director said that what they took inspiration from was Final Fantasy series, the Persona series, Lost Odyssey, and the Tales series. Alright, I've got that cloud gaming quality. You know, I could see this game being fun with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I mean, the combat, it's weird because it takes you into a separate loading screen to start, which it looks like what they do in Clair Obscur. But then when you're actually in the game, it's not, in the actual fight, it's not turn-based. I'll show you this. See how it just loads in? That's kind of interesting. So these all sound similar enough, but they're actually quite different. They are mostly JRPGs, but they all have their own unique qualities to them. Look at our squad though. We've all been through so much. We've broken hearts, we've defeated monsters, we're solving murders with even higher stakes. Now this is a murder mystery, Persona 4, but there's so much potential for character building when you have stuff like this, and that's why this is such a good game. Because it works around that murder mystery, it brings everyone together through their trauma, and you get to know these kids better. And when you think Persona, you think the social links, you think forming bonds with people and learning more about them, and the stories that are told through character development. And when you think of Lost Odyssey and Final Fantasy series, those are similar enough, but they just involve epic quests and primarily JRPGs, not so much Final Fantasy anymore. Talk about good, unique storytelling. You generally, when you're talking about JRPGs, you look at 2D games, and one thing you immediately think of if you played it, Octopath Traveler. This is just a great one, and this is what JRPGs are about, telling great, unique, interesting stories in interesting ways, and then the combat does the combat thing, you know. But that's what's great about Clair Obscur. The combat's even itself going to be unique. Now the director also mentions Attack on Titan, to which I say no more, my friend. You have my heart already. I love Attack on Titan, and when someone mentions that as inspiration for their work, what would I think? Well, I would immediately think moral crisis. Extreme questions of morality every single time I'm playing the game. Something like that. I would expect the world ending, sort of, and an impending doom looming over the game. I'm expecting a dark, gritty game, and everything they've showed walks that line pretty well from what I can tell. They're not doing something like Avowed, where the first trailer was really dark and gritty and everything else we've seen hasn't been that. I am excited for that game, but the tone seems to be consistent with what they're saying and what they've shown. So I'm really encouraged by that. On top of all of this, they also list the Soul series, Nier Automata, and Devil May Cry as even more inspiration. And it seems like that's maybe more of the combat inspiration that they're taking from it, because this game is not just your classic JRPG turn-based combat. They added some interesting stuff. The first thing one notices about it is how it's turn-based. Looks beautiful, and then I remember watching the reveal trailer. When that turn-based combat hits, I'm sure some of us, like myself, were like, oh, that's freaking awesome. Oh, I just had such a big sneeze, holy cow. There's my sneeze per video. While others were probably thinking, ah, not another turn-based combat game. I don't get that. I think it's still fun, and oftentimes those JRPGs have the best stories and best characters I've seen in gaming. What this game does that will even intrigue those people that don't love turn-based combat is they decided to focus on adding dodging and parrying elements to that combat. So I'm very excited for that. It sort of reminds me of the Mario and Luigi series, or Paper Mario, Super Mario RPG. Wahoo! Tickled my throat. Wahoo! There we go. Alright, so this is a little preview of the combat that I'm thinking that Clair Obscur could go with. Now, obviously, this is Mario. This is fairly simplified, but it's still complex. You keep pushing A, you get more power. If you time your jumps right. I can jump and then I hurt him if he comes at me. I also could have emergency guarded there to do a sort of parry style block. And it's Mario, it's simple, but it's fun and it's interesting. So this is what we need more of. And this is what I think Clair Obscur is going to try to do. Where you're actively fighting during the turn-based combat. You're jumping, you're countering, you're parrying. You know, those are heavy words for a Mario game, but that's the idea though. You are active every time the enemy attacks and when you attack. You're trying to time your timing to get a little extra damage on it. Yeah, I'm just excited for it. It seems like they're doing all the right things, and they're also doing something that Metaphor ReFantazio sort of claimed to have done, but I don't think it really did, which is innovate JRPG combat. Metaphor ReFantazio innovated the pre-combat, but when it came to actual combat in the game, it was pretty samey once you got into the turn-based style. So the game also has skill trees and unique mechanics for each character. This sort of reminds me of Ultimus from Final Fantasy. Like summoning Bahamut, stuff like that. You can summon these creatures, and it's just an awesome mechanic, and it gives each character, some of them are really funny, like in 8, you're wondering what the heck's going on. It gives each character a unique wrinkle to them, and I don't know if they're quite as intense as the Final Fantasy system, but oh, and what are they called? Limit breakers in Final Fantasy VII. I don't know if they're quite that intense, but they each have their own unique skill sets. They've also added in sort of their own terminology to the game, which I like. It's making things that we're used to seeing seem different. It's smart. So there are Pictos, which are gear modifiers, and if you wear those for a long enough amount of time, they turn into Lumina, which are passive abilities. And just the fact that they gave those different words, I think, is a smart choice, because it makes you feel more rooted in the world. And it feels like you're sort of in the know. You're a part of the Clair Obscur Expedition 33 world. I have a really awesome quote I want to tell you about too. So the director said, "We want players to break the game." So the last 2 times I've heard someone say something like that are some of the best games we've seen this decade and maybe century. in Baldur's Gate 3 and Tears of the Kingdom. That's an encouraging quote, and you know why it's so encouraging? It's because it shows confidence. It shows that they're like, alright, bring it on. We're not even saying you can't break our game, we're saying we want you to, and that is fun for us. We want to see how creative players can be. And that tells me all I need to know about how confident I'm feeling about this game, and why it's going to be the next great RPG of the year. You may be wondering how hard the game is, because one thing that Metaphor ReFantazio didn't do well either, I think. I hate to keep comparing it, but I was slightly disappointed by that game. One thing that it didn't do well was difficulty, I thought. When you turn it onto harder difficulties, you get less XP and the enemies get another turn. When it comes to Clair Obscur, and when you go to the easiest difficulty in Metaphor ReFantazio, you end up being trapped there and you can't switch out, which I think it's important to have that option to go down to get out of a soft lock, because there's a significant difference between that storytelling difficulty and that easy difficulty. And I say that as someone who did most of the game through hard and then to normal and then down to storytelling, because I got sort of soft locked in an area. And I knew I was going to get trapped, so I just took the hit, but Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is focusing on difficulty by making that parrying and dodging window even tighter. Maybe Sekiro-like, which is very interesting, and I like that. It's a good practical way of just making it easier. Hey, if you press A second late, it's still going to dodge. But if you don't actually press it right on the frame on the hardest, you're getting smashed, so it's going to be awesome. Already talked a little bit about the art style. It's just beautiful. It's reminiscent of Final Fantasy 16 and that Elden Ring style. It just has a interesting, beautiful, unsettling aura about it. And I really love that, because it speaks to the impending doom you might feel as that Expedition 33 crew. Alright, so I want to show you one of my favorite quotes from any JRPG developer. This is where we really make some crazy combos, and they're talking about builds and building your character and so forth. And he said, "And this is where we expect players to really break the game. And we hope they break the game because it's made for that." That's awesome. There's only a few other games where I've heard such a phrase uttered. The first two that come to mind, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3. Two of the best games of the last decade for sure, and maybe even the century. So that has me excited. I love the confidence. That's what we love to see. There's also going to be a world map. They talked about it at the Xbox Developer Showcase. That's exciting, but they do need to do it right. It can't be an Ubisoft map. It can't be Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with the towers. They have to do it right. What I'm hoping for is low UI, or at least UI you can control, like in Tears of the Kingdom. But what I'd like even more, and I could see them doing this because they just seem like they're having fun. What I want them to do is, or what I'd like to see is to have a hand-drawn style map. So let's say you fight a dragon, because they say there are secret levels, secret bosses and so forth. If you fight a dragon in this corner of the map, maybe after you fought the dragon, just scroll it in. And it's just up in the top corner. If you see a cave in the middle of the map, maybe after you've explored it, it's just drawn in on the map. But when you start out, it's a blank canvas, and that's what I'd like to see. I want something creative. I want something cool that's not just fog disappearing from a map. Or maybe I can buy the map, and so there's sort of an animation of me unfurling it and looking at it. And I just hope they do it creatively and interestingly. So my last bit of holy cow, these guys are confident. It's coming out. I've been talking about this for a while as game prices. GTA might be $100. That's why I made my video about indie games prior to this one. Because maybe we have to start looking elsewhere. Maybe we have to look at cheaper games because game prices are rising. It was bound to happen. But when it comes to this game, it's coming out at $50, and they've said, and Game Pass as well, and they've said, yeah, it's 30 plus hours of content. We hope you have fun. That's what it's going to be. And that's confident. I freaking love that because we have seen too many insecure developers being insecure for a reason. I'm not saying they shouldn't be, because a lot of time they're insecure for a reason. It's sort of like giving a speech when you don't know what's on your slideshow, or you know that your slideshows are missing a few words or have some errors in them. You're not going to be confident in that. You're going to have a shaky voice up there. You don't know what the content of it is, and what they seem like is someone who's been studying that slideshow. They've perfected it night after night, and they're ready. Heck, they could show us that slideshow a month early. Maybe there'll be a demo. But I'm excited for all of that. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is looking awesome. We'll check back in a few months and see if I was right. But keep an eye out for this one, guys. I really hope it does good things for the JRPG gaming space. But thanks, have a good one.